I've captured thousands of wedding moments over my 12-year career. The tearful father seeing his daughter in her dress for the first time, the nervous groom checking his pocket for the ring, the flower girl deciding halfway down the aisle that she'd rather wear the petals than scatter them. These are the emotional beats that make weddings worth photographing, genuine human moments amid the carefully orchestrated pageantry. But sometimes my camera catches things that weren't meant to be preserved. Words not intended for documentation, expressions that reveal unspoken tensions, the shadow side of celebration. That's what happened at the Chen Wilson wedding last June. My name is Maya Desai, and my photography studio specializes in what I call narrative wedding photography, telling the complete story of a couple's day through carefully composed images. I'm known for capturing authentic moments rather than just posed portraits, which is why Eliza Chen hired me despite her future mother-in-law's suggestion of a more traditional photographer. My fiancé's mother has specific ideas about the wedding, Eliza explained during our initial consultation, her fingers nervously twisting the engagement ring on her hand. But this is our day, and we want it documented our way. I'd nodded, familiar with the delicate dance of wedding politics. Tell me about you and James. How did you meet? Her face transformed as she described their meeting at a charity fundraiser 3 years earlier, she volunteering as an event coordinator, he attending as a guest of his parents. She spoke of their gradual courtship, their shared love of travel and community service, their decision to build a life that blended their different backgrounds and traditions. Eliza was Chinese-American, raised by immigrant parents who had built a successful restaurant business in Chicago. James came from old money. The Wilsons were a prominent family in Massachusetts banking circles, with a summer home in the Hamptons and a winter retreat in Palm Beach. Despite their different upbringings, Eliza and James had forged a connection based on shared values and genuine affection. His parents were surprised by his choice, Eliza admitted with careful understatement. But they've come around, mostly. I'd photographed enough weddings to recognize the subtle tension in her voice, the slight furrow between her brows as she mentioned his family. But I'd also seen many instances where wedding day magic dissolved family reservations, where joy overcame prejudice, where love won the day. So when I arrived at the exclusive oceanfront estate in Newport where the ceremony would take place, I was prepared for the usual emotional undercurrents, but optimistic that my final portfolio would showcase a beautiful merging of families and traditions. I had no idea that my camera would capture a moment that would force me to question the ethics of my profession and my responsibility to the couples who trust me to tell their stories. It happened during the getting ready photos, in the luxurious bridal suite overlooking the Atlantic. My second shooter was with James and his groomsmen, while I focused on Eliza and her bridal party. The moment my lens caught would alter the course of the day in ways none of us could have anticipated. The Chen Wilson wedding represented a significant budget in my portfolio. A 3-day event with a rehearsal dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant, the ceremony and reception at the oceanfront estate, and a farewell brunch at the Newport Yacht Club. As one of New England's most sought-after wedding photographers, I'd worked with wealthy clients before, but the Wilson family operated at another level entirely. Margaret Wilson, the groom's mother, was a formidable presence from our first interaction. Tall, slender, and perpetually adorned in tasteful designer wear, she carried herself with the confident authority of someone accustomed to deference. Her husband, Richard, presented a more approachable facade, though his warmth never quite reached his eyes when he spoke to Eliza or her family. "We've used Harrison Studios for all our family events," Margaret had informed me during our only pre-wedding meeting, her tone making it clear she was sharing this as criticism rather than conversation. "They understand our aesthetic preferences." "Mom, we've discussed this," James had intervened, his arm tightening protectively around Eliza's shoulders. "Maya's style captures exactly what we want for our wedding memories." At 32, James Wilson had his father's height and his mother's refined features, but none of their apparent reserve. He worked at the family's investment firm, but had established his own division focused on sustainable ventures and community development. His genuine passion for social impact was what had initially connected him with Eliza, who managed corporate partnerships for a major environmental nonprofit. Eliza Chen embodied quiet confidence. At 29, she possessed both striking beauty and formidable intelligence, with a master's degree in environmental policy and a talent for navigating complex social situations with grace. Throughout the planning process, I'd watched her carefully balance respecting Wilson family traditions while maintaining elements important to her own cultural heritage. Her parents, Wei and Mei Chen, approached the extravagant wedding with a mixture of pride and discomfort. They had built their lives through relentless work, transforming a small family restaurant into a successful chain across the Midwest. Their achievements were substantial, but they operated in a different world than the old money circles of the Wilsons. "We just want Eliza to be happy," May had told me softly during our brief meeting. "And James is a good man, despite—" She hadn't finished the sentence, but her glance toward Margaret Wilson had communicated volumes. The bridal party reflected this cultural divide. Eliza's side included her sister Lily, 2 cousins, and 3 friends from college and work, a diverse group who interacted with easy familiarity. James's attendants were predominantly prep school and Harvard connections, polished and cordial, but more reserved. As a photographer, I'm trained to observe these dynamics, to anticipate emotional moments and position myself to capture them. The subtle tensions between the families created an undercurrent I recognized from other weddings where different worlds collided. Usually, these tensions dissolved during the ceremony and celebration, overcome by the genuine joy of the occasion. But sometimes, as I've learned over years of documenting milestone moments, what's beneath the surface refuses to stay hidden. And my camera, the silent, objective witness, records these revelations without judgment or censorship. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and perfect, the Newport estate's manicured grounds glowing in the early summer light. As I moved between preparation spaces with my cameras, I was already composing the visual narrative in my mind, the merging of 2 distinct families, the triumph of love over difference, the beginning of a new story transcending the old. I had no idea that within hours, my professional ethics would be tested by a single frame, a captured moment that would force everyone involved to confront the truth behind the beautiful facade. The bridal suite buzzed with anticipation as hair and makeup artists worked their magic on Eliza and her attendants. Champagne flutes clinked, music played softly in the background, and morning light streamed through tall windows overlooking the ocean. I moved through the space capturing candid moments, Lily fastening their grandmother's pearl bracelet around Eliza's wrist, bridesmaids helping each other with zipper details, Mei Chen watching her daughter with shining eyes. 30 minutes until first look, I announced, checking my schedule. "Eliza, we should get you into your dress soon." The wedding gown hung by the window, a stunning creation that blended Western silhouette with subtle elements honoring Eliza's Chinese heritage. The silk fabric featured hand-embroidered peonies, and custom buttons shaped like plum blossoms closed the back. It managed to be both traditional and uniquely personal, much like the fusion ceremony the couple had planned. As Eliza's friends helped her into the gown, I heard the suite door open. Margaret Wilson entered, impeccable in a silvery blue dress and jacket ensemble that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She carried a small blue box tied with white ribbon. "I thought you might want to wear these," she said, extending the box toward Eliza. "They were my grandmother's, Wilson family heirlooms, something borrowed and blue." Eliza's expression registered surprise, followed by genuine pleasure. "That's incredibly thoughtful, Margaret. Thank you." The box contained sapphire and diamond drop earrings that complemented Eliza's ensemble perfectly. As she put them on, I captured Margaret's seemingly approving nod and the hopeful glances exchanged among the bridesmaids. Perhaps the earlier tensions had been overstated. Perhaps this gesture signaled true acceptance. "I'll give you a moment with your mother," Margaret said, turning toward the door. "I need to check on James anyway." I focused on capturing May's reaction to seeing her daughter fully dressed. The emotional embrace between mother and daughter creating precisely the kind of authentic moment clients hire me for. Through my viewfinder, I noticed Margaret had paused at the door, looking back at the scene. Something in her expression made me continue the rapid sequence of shots, a photographer's instinct that served me well over the years. As Margaret exited, she passed Lily entering with the veil. I wouldn't have heard her words had I not been relatively close to the door, adjusting my position to capture May helping Eliza with the earrings. "All this effort," Margaret murmured, apparently to herself, but loud enough to carry in the momentary lull in conversation. "But she still doesn't belong here." My finger reflexively pressed the shutter release, capturing her expression precisely as these words left her mouth. Lips slightly pursed, eyes narrowed, face set in momentary unguarded judgment. In the same frame, partially blurred but still visible, was Lily's shocked face as she overheard the comment. For a moment I froze, unsure if others had heard. May was focused entirely on her daughter. The bridesmaids were arranging the dress train. But Lily's expression confirmed she'd caught the words just as clearly as I had. Our eyes met, and I saw the instant calculation in hers. whether to say something, whether to disrupt the joyful preparation with this ugly revelation. In that moment of silent communication, I gave a small, almost imperceptible headshake. Not now, not this moment. Lily visibly swallowed, composed her features, and moved forward with the veil as if nothing had happened. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged it on her sister's head, but her smile never faltered. "You look absolutely perfect," she told Eliza, her voice steady despite the emotion I could see she was containing. I continued photographing, my professional mask firmly in place despite the churning in my stomach. As I worked, questions raced through my mind. What should I do with that image? Was it my responsibility to show it to the couple? Or to delete it and pretend I hadn't heard the comment or captured Margaret's expression? The bridal preparation continued, but now I noticed subtle dynamics I'd missed before. The way Margaret's friends among the wedding guests maintained slight distance from Eliza's family, the occasional evaluating glances cast toward the Chen relatives, the careful way Eliza's father navigated conversations with James's college friends. What I had initially read as typical wedding day nervousness now revealed itself as something more insidious, a current of unspoken judgment running beneath the beautiful celebration. And my camera had captured irrefutable evidence of its existence. As I prepared for the first look photos between Eliza and James, I made a split-second decision to pull Lily aside. "I heard it too," I whispered, "and I have it on camera. Let's talk after the ceremony about what to do." Her eyes widened slightly, then she nodded with grim determination. "She deserves to know the truth," Lily whispered back. "But not today. Today is for happiness." We rejoined the group, both carrying the weight of knowledge neither of us had sought. The wedding day proceeded, but now I photographed with dual awareness, capturing the joy and beauty for the couple while remaining alert to the undercurrents I could no longer unsee or unhear. The question haunting me as I worked was whether some truths should remain uncaptured, even by a photographer committed to authentic documentation, and whether the image now stored in my camera represented a violation of trust or the most honest service I could provide to my clients. As the wedding day progressed, I observed the interactions around me with heightened awareness. What might have seemed like minor tensions before now appeared as symptoms of a deeper discord. James's best man, Connor, a prep school friend with the confident swagger of inherited privilege, made repeated comments about the exotic elements of the celebration. Each time, he clearly thought he was being worldly and appreciative, oblivious to the wince these remarks elicited from Eliza's relatives. "I've never been to such an interesting wedding," he told Eliza's cousin Emily during the cocktail hour, champagne glass waving expansively. "All these Chinese touches really make it special." Emily, who held a PhD in East Asian Studies from Columbia, smiled tightly. "Chinese American," she corrected. Eliza was born in Chicago. Connor either missed or ignored the correction. "You know, I dated an Asian girl in college. Fascinating culture." I caught this exchange while photographing guests, noting Emily's polite but pained expression. Later, I observed her speaking intensely with Lily, both glancing toward Margaret Wilson, who was holding court among her friends from the country club. Another layer of complexity emerged during the family portrait session. I had carefully created a shot list with Eliza that included various family combinations, including several incorporating Chinese wedding traditions alongside Western ones. When I began directing these setups, Margaret intervened. "Perhaps we should focus on the standard arrangements," she suggested firmly. "We're running behind schedule." We weren't, in fact, behind schedule at all, but her authority was such that several family members began to rearrange themselves according to her direction. It was James who stepped in. "Mom, we discussed this. These traditions are important to Eliza and to me." His tone was respectful but unyielding. "Maya has the correct shot list." Margaret acquiesced with a tight smile, but I noticed Richard Wilson whispering something in his son's ear afterward that made James's jaw clench momentarily before he regained his composure. Even the seating arrangements at the reception revealed careful navigation of cultural divides. The Chen family's tables were positioned in a separate section from the Wilson relatives, with the couple's friends serving as a buffer zone between the two families. What might have seemed like practical organization now struck me as deliberate separation. Throughout these observations, I maintained my professional demeanor, documenting the day as contracted. But my awareness of Margaret's comment colored everything, making me question which moments to prioritize, which interactions to focus on, which narrative I was truly capturing with my lens. During a brief break while guests were eating, I reviewed some images on my camera's display. The photo of Margaret's expression as she uttered those damning words was exactly as I remembered. Clear, unambiguous, impossible to misinterpret. In the background, Lily's shocked face provided context that made the moment even more powerful and disturbing. I was so absorbed in examining this image that I didn't notice someone approaching until a shadow fell across my camera. Finding some good shots? I looked up to find James standing beside me, his expression friendly and unsuspecting. For a horrible moment, I feared he might ask to see what I was reviewing. "Definitely," I replied, quickly switching to a safe image of him and Eliza during the ceremony. "Your vows were beautiful." He smiled, genuine happiness momentarily erasing any trace of the tension I'd observed earlier. "It's been the perfect day. Eliza is everything." The simple sincerity in his voice made my ethical dilemma even more acute. As he walked away to rejoin his bride, I made a decision. I would complete this assignment with absolute professionalism. I would deliver a beautiful collection that emphasized the love and joy of the day, but I would also preserve that one critical frame, setting it aside until I could determine the right course of action. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly circumstances would force that decision upon me, or how the consequences would ripple beyond the wedding day itself. The reception was in full swing. Dinner served, toast delivered, first dances completed. I moved through the elegant tent, capturing candid moments, elderly relatives sharing stories across language barriers, children from both families playing together beneath tables, James and Eliza stealing quiet moments between greeting guests. On the surface, the celebration appeared seamless. The fusion menu had delighted guests, the band skillfully blended musical traditions, and the golden sunset over the Atlantic provided a spectacular backdrop for evening portraits. If I hadn't captured that moment in the bridal suite, I might have believed the narrative of perfect cultural harmony myself. During a brief pause to change memory cards, I noticed Lily in intense conversation with her parents near the dessert table. Wei Chen's expression had darkened considerably, while May kept glancing toward Margaret Wilson, who was chatting with the wedding planner across the tent. The body language suggested Lily had shared what she'd overheard. Before I could process the implications, my second shooter Thomas approached with concern etched on his face. "We may have a situation," he murmured, nodding toward the tent entrance where Connor was escorting an elderly Chinese gentleman away from the bar. Even from a distance, I could see the best man's patronizing smile as he spoke loudly and slowly, as if to someone who couldn't understand English. "That's Eliza's grandfather," I realized with a sinking feeling. Dr. Chen was a respected physics professor who had immigrated to the United States in the 1970s after earning his doctorate at Cambridge. His English was probably more precise than Connor's. I watched as Wei Chen noticed the interaction and moved swiftly across the room, his previous conversation with Lily forgotten in the face of this new situation. Though I couldn't hear the exchange that followed, the body language told the story. Wei's controlled anger, Connor's dismissive backpedaling, Dr. Chen's dignified discomfort. James approached the group, quickly assessing the situation. He said something to Connor that made his friend's face flush red, then turned to Dr. Chen with a respectful bow that acknowledged the older man's status in his family. It was a perfect response to diffuse the tension, and I captured the moment reflexively, documenting both James's cultural sensitivity and Connor's chastened expression. As the situation resolved, I noticed Lily watching from several feet away, her phone in her hand. Our eyes met, and she gave a subtle nod before disappearing toward the restrooms. Moments later, my phone vibrated with a text. "Need to talk. Women's lounge, important." I found Lily sitting alone in the plush seating area of the restroom lounge, her expression resolute. "My parents know what Margaret said," she began without preamble. "And now this thing with Grandpa. It's not an isolated incident, Maya. There's been a pattern throughout the engagement that Eliza has downplayed. Subtle digs, exclusionary behavior, comments about her adjusting to their world." I nodded, unsurprised but still disturbed. "I noticed some tensions today. My father wants evidence," Lily continued. "He's tired of these interactions being dismissed as misunderstandings or cultural differences. He wants proof to show James directly." I felt a chill despite the warm evening. "You mean the photo I took?" "Yes." Her gaze was unflinching. "You captured what she said. There's no ambiguity, no way to reinterpret or deny it." The ethical implications crashed through my mind. I had never shared unflattering images with clients, let alone used my photography to expose private comments. My business operated on trust and discretion. But I also couldn't deny the pattern of behavior that marginalized Eliza and her family, on what should have been a day of equal celebration. Showing that image right now could destroy the wedding, I said carefully. Whatever your father's intentions, confronting James with this during the reception would create a scene that Eliza might never forgive. Lily's shoulders slumped slightly. I know. That's why I haven't told them you have it on camera. But afterward, don't they deserve to know who they're really dealing with? Especially since James and Eliza are talking about starting a family soon. Imagine mixed-race grandchildren being raised around that attitude. The question hung between us, weighty with implications. Before I could respond, the lounge door opened and Eliza herself entered, her wedding gown rustling softly. Her expression was concerned as she looked between us. Is everything okay? You both disappeared at the same time. For a moment, neither Lily nor I spoke, caught in our conspiracy of knowledge. Then Eliza's eyes narrowed slightly, her perceptiveness cutting through our silence. What's going on? She asked, her tone shifting from curious to wary. Did something happen? In that moment, I had to make a split-second decision that would affect not just this couple's wedding memories, but potentially their future relationship with family members. The professional detachment I'd maintained throughout my career suddenly seemed inadequate for the moral complexity of the situation before me. Eliza, I began, choosing my words with extreme care. There's something I captured today that you should probably know about, but the decision about when and how to address it should be entirely yours. The bride's expression shifted from confusion to understanding as realization dawned. It's about Margaret, isn't it? She asked quietly. What did she say this time? The resignation in her voice told me everything I needed to know about the true dynamics behind this seemingly perfect celebration. And it confirmed that my ethical dilemma was more complex than a simple question of professional boundaries. It had become a matter of human dignity and truth. I've known who Margaret is since the first dinner I had with James's family, Eliza said as she sank onto the velvet settee in the lounge. She asked me where I was really from 3 times in one conversation, even after I repeatedly said Chicago. The resignation in her voice broke my heart. This poised, accomplished woman had been navigating these microaggressions throughout her relationship, choosing love despite them. What exactly did you capture? She asked, looking directly at me. Lily and I exchanged glances. It's not just what she said, but when and how, Lily explained. It was right after she gave you those earrings, that seemingly kind gesture. I took a deep breath. She said, all this effort, but she still doesn't belong here. My camera caught her expression as she said it, and Lily hearing it. Eliza closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, I saw not surprise but confirmation. That tracks with dozens of comments over the past 3 years. The jewelry was probably her attempt at establishing dominance, a reminder that Wilson family acceptance comes with strings attached. Her clear-eyed assessment surprised me. You're not shocked? No. Disappointed but not shocked. I've chosen to focus on James, who consistently stands up for me and recognizes these patterns when they happen. He's nothing like his mother. Lily leaned forward. But Eliza, Dad is furious about what happened with Grandpa. If he finds out about this too... He won't, Eliza interrupted firmly. Not tonight. This is still my wedding day, and I won't have it derailed by Margaret's issues or Dad's justified but explosive reaction to them. She turned to me. I trust your judgment, Maya. I hired you because you capture authentic moments, not just pretty ones. But I need to control when and how this particular truth is addressed. The responsibility weighed heavily. What would you like me to do? Complete the wedding as contracted. Deliver the beautiful album we discussed, but keep that image separate, secure but accessible if needed. James and I will be leaving for our honeymoon tomorrow. When we return, we'll discuss how to address this with both families. Her measured response impressed me. Many brides would have crumbled under the emotional weight of such a revelation, but Eliza was calculating the implications with remarkable clarity. And tonight, Lily pressed, what do I tell Dad about Grandpa? Tell him James handled it appropriately, which he did. Tell him we'll discuss family dynamics when we return. Remind him that today is about celebration, not confrontation. As we prepared to return to the reception, Eliza paused at the mirror to adjust her veil. The irony is that I've been killing myself trying to blend our cultures respectfully, to honor both families equally. I designed this entire wedding as a bridge between worlds. The sadness beneath her composed exterior was palpable. I placed a hand briefly on her shoulder, colleague to client, but also woman to woman. For what it's worth, you've succeeded beautifully. One person's inability to appreciate that doesn't diminish your achievement. She smiled gratefully, then straightened her shoulders and transformed back into the radiant bride. Let's rejoin my wedding. I have a marriage to begin, regardless of Margaret Wilson's opinions on the matter. As we returned to the reception, I watched Eliza move confidently through the crowd, embracing guests from both families, her joy seemingly undimmed by what had transpired. But I noticed new details now. How she positioned herself protectively near her grandfather, how she ensured her parents were included in key moments, how she subtly guided James away from situations where his mother might create tension. These weren't the actions of someone naive about family dynamics, but of a woman who had made a conscious choice to love her partner while maintaining clear-eyed awareness of the challenges they faced. My respect for her deepened immeasurably. For the remainder of the evening, I photographed with renewed purpose, capturing not just the celebration's beauty, but the resilience and determination beneath it. These would be the images that told the true story of the day. Not perfect harmony, but love persisting despite imperfection. 3 weeks after the Chen Wilson wedding, I sat in my studio reviewing the final image selection. I had carefully curated a collection that emphasized the couple's genuine connection, the successful blending of traditions, and the many moments of joy throughout the day. The controversial image remained secured separately on an encrypted drive, untouched since the event. My phone rang. Eliza's number. They had returned from their honeymoon in Japan 2 days earlier. "We'd like to come see the preliminary album layout," she said after our initial greetings, "and discuss the other matter. Are you available this afternoon?" 4 hours later, Eliza and James sat across from me in my consultation room, tanned from their travels and still radiating newlywed happiness. As we reviewed the wedding images, their delight in the photographs was evident and gratifying. "These are exactly what we hoped for," James said, pausing on a particularly beautiful shot of Eliza's parents watching the ceremony, their faces reflecting pride and emotion. "You captured everyone so authentically." The word hung in the air between us as we finished the main portfolio review. Then Eliza looked at me directly. "We'd like to see the image from the bridal suite now." I retrieved my laptop with the secured file. "Before I show you this, I want you both to know that my only interest is in providing you with the truth of your day. Whatever you choose to do with that truth is entirely your decision." They nodded, hands clasped together on the table between them. I turned the screen toward them, displaying the image in question. The photograph was technically perfect, Margaret's face in sharp focus as she uttered those damning words, her expression clearly conveying disdain. Lily's shocked reaction in the background provided context that made the moment impossible to dismiss as misinterpreted. The timing, just after the gift of family heirlooms, added an extra layer of painful duplicity. James inhaled sharply. Eliza's expression remained steady, though her grip on her husband's hand tightened visibly. "I suspected something like this had happened," James said after a long moment, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Mom was too insistent about those earrings, too performative about the gesture. But seeing it, hearing exactly what she said, what will you do?" I asked quietly. The couple exchanged a look that contained an entire conversation. This was clearly something they had already discussed extensively. "We've made some decisions during our honeymoon," Eliza explained. "We're relocating to Chicago for at least the next 2 years. James can manage the Midwest division of Wilson Investments from there, and I'll be closer to my family as we start thinking about children." James nodded. "It's a compromise we both feel good about. Not running away from the situation, but creating some healthy distance while maintaining family connections on both sides. As for this specific incident," Eliza continued, "we're going to have a private conversation with Margaret and Richard, just the 4 of us. We'll be direct about what was captured and what it represents, but our goal isn't punishment. It's clarity about boundaries moving forward." The maturity of their approach impressed me. "And your parents?" I asked Eliza. "They'll know we're addressing the situation, but not the specifics. My father's anger is justified, but escalating family tensions won't help anyone." James leaned forward. "We'd like a copy of this image, not for distribution, but as a reminder for ourselves of what we're working to change and why these conversations matter." I nodded, understanding their purpose wasn't vindictive but constructive. "Of course." As they prepared to leave, Eliza paused. "Thank you for not hiding this from us. Many photographers would have deleted it to avoid complications. I believe my responsibility is to the truth of your day, the beautiful parts and the challenging ones. The truth is complex," she agreed. "Our marriage will face cultural tensions and family adjustments. Pretending otherwise doesn't serve anyone." James wrapped an arm around his wife's shoulders. "But we're facing those challenges together, with open eyes and honest communication. That's the foundation we're choosing to build on. After they left, I sat reflecting on the ethical complexities of my profession. As wedding photographers, we're entrusted with documenting milestone moments that families will revisit for generations. The temptation to present only the polished, perfect version of events is strong, to create the fairy tale rather than the full story. But Eliza and James had reminded me that true service sometimes means capturing difficult truths alongside celebratory ones. Their response, thoughtful, measured, and forward-looking, validated my decision to preserve that controversial moment rather than erase it. 2 months later, I received an email from the couple with an update. They had moved to Chicago and had the difficult conversation with James's parents. While initially defensive, Margaret had eventually acknowledged her behavior and agreed to counseling to address her cultural biases. The process was ongoing and sometimes difficult, but represented progress that might never have happened without the catalyst of that captured moment. "Some truths need to be seen to be addressed," Eliza wrote. "Thank you for having the courage to show us ours." The message included a photo they'd taken during a family dinner in Chicago, both sets of parents around the same table. Margaret Wilson actually engaged in conversation with Dr. Chen. It wasn't perfect harmony, but it was genuine effort. As photographers, we often say we preserve memories. What I'd come to understand through this experience was that sometimes we also create opportunities for growth and change, not by staging perfect moments, but by honestly documenting real ones. 6 months after the Chen-Wilson wedding, my studio was busier than ever. The authentic approach I'd taken with Eliza and James's album had attracted clients specifically looking for honest documentation rather than idealized fantasy. I had begun to develop a reputation for capturing the complete emotional narrative of wedding days, the tensions as well as the triumphs, the complex family dynamics alongside the romance. On a crisp December morning, I was surprised to receive a call from James Wilson. "Maya, we need your professional services again," he began, his tone more serious than I expected, though not for a traditional photography assignment. He explained that his parents were hosting a significant anniversary celebration at their Boston home the following weekend. 50 years of marriage, with extended family and close friends in attendance. The Chens had been invited and had accepted, a positive development in the ongoing family integration. "We've made real progress these past months," James said. "Mom's been working with a cultural sensitivity counselor. Dad's made genuine efforts to connect with Eliza's family. But my grandmother, my father's mother, will be attending from Palm Beach. She's challenging." I understood immediately. The family matriarch represented an older generation with potentially even more entrenched attitudes than Margaret had displayed. "You want me to document the event? Capture any problematic interactions?" "Not exactly," James replied. "We want you there as a known observer, someone whose previous documentation created accountability. Your presence alone might help prevent issues before they occur." The request was unusual but intriguing. Not hiring me as a photographer per se, but as a preventative measure against potential microaggressions or insensitive comments. My camera would serve as both deterrent and potential witness. "Eleanor Wilson respects very few things," James continued, "but fear of social documentation is high on that list. If she knows you're the photographer who captured that moment with my mother, she'll be on her best behavior." I considered the ethical implications carefully. "I'm not comfortable being used as a threat, James." "Not a threat," he clarified quickly. "A reminder that actions have consequences, that words matter. We're trying to build a family culture where everyone feels respected. Sometimes external accountability helps that process." After further discussion about boundaries and expectations, I agreed to attend as the official event photographer, with clear parameters around my role. I would document the celebration professionally, but would not be positioned as family surveillance. My presence would be transparent, my purpose explained honestly to all involved. The week before the anniversary party, Eliza called to provide additional context. "Eleanor has been making comments about maintaining the Wilson bloodline since she learned we're trying to start a family," she explained, her voice steady despite the obvious hurt beneath the words. "James has addressed it directly, but we're concerned about what might be said after a few glasses of champagne at the celebration." As I prepared my equipment for the assignment, I reflected on how my role had evolved from passive documenter to active participant in this family's journey toward mutual respect. The responsibility weighed heavily, but so did my commitment to the truth, even when that truth was uncomfortable. The anniversary celebration would bring together all the key players from the wedding drama, plus the added complexity of Eleanor Wilson's presence. The potential for both breakthrough and breakdown seemed equally balanced. Whatever happened, my camera would bear witness, creating a record that couldn't be dismissed or reinterpreted later. What I didn't anticipate was how dramatically events would unfold, or how a single image would once again become the catalyst for profound family transformation. The Wilson family home in Boston's Beacon Hill neighborhood exuded old money elegance. Oil paintings of ancestors, antique furniture, and discrete evidence of generational wealth. As I moved through the anniversary celebration capturing professional images, I observed the careful dance between the Chen and Wilson families with interest. True to James's word, progress was evident. Margaret Wilson engaged Wei Chen in what appeared to be genuine conversation about his restaurant business. Richard Wilson had learned a few phrases in Mandarin that he used with obvious pride when speaking with May's relatives. The effort, while sometimes awkward, seemed sincere. Eleanor Wilson, however, remained a formidable presence. In her mid-80s, but striking in an expensive navy dress and family diamonds, she held court from a wingback chair, receiving guests with regal acknowledgement. Her assessment of each person who approached was evident in subtle gradations of warmth or coolness. When Eliza came to greet her, I positioned myself unobtrusively nearby, capturing the interaction with my telephoto lens. Eleanor's smile remained fixed, but her eyes performed a critical evaluation of her grandson's wife. "You look well," she told Eliza. "Marriage agrees with you." "Thank you," Eliza replied warmly. "James and I are very happy." "Happiness is important in the early days," Eleanor acknowledged with a nod. "Later, commitment to family becomes paramount. The Wilson name carries responsibilities spanning generations." The loaded comment hung in the air between them. I captured Eliza's expression, polite but aware, as she responded, "James and I both value family deeply. That's why we're so pleased to see everyone together today." James joined them, placing a protective hand at the small of Eliza's back. "Grandmother, I hope you've been introduced to everyone from Eliza's family?" "Your mother has been handling those introductions," Eleanor replied with a dismissive wave. "I'm conserving my energy for longtime friends." The subtle exclusion was expertly delivered, maintaining plausible deniability while clearly communicating hierarchy. James's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but before he could respond, the event planner announced that dinner would be served shortly. The tension dissipated as guests moved toward the dining room. I continued photographing, capturing both the elegant setting and the human interactions unfolding around the celebration. Though Eleanor had been coolly dismissive, nothing had risen to the level of overt hostility or prejudice. During dinner, however, the dynamic shifted. Eleanor, seated near Richard and Margaret with a clear line of sight to James and Eliza, became increasingly animated as she consumed several glasses of champagne. Her voice carried during lulls in the conversation, fragments of her commentary reaching across the room. Third generation at Harvard, of course. Proper upbringing makes all the difference. Some traditions must be preserved. Each statement seemed calibrated to establish distinction between old New England lineage and newer American experiences. The Chen family members responded with gracious forbearance, but I noticed Wei's expression hardening as the evening progressed. The situation escalated during the anniversary toast. Richard Wilson had just finished a heartfelt tribute to his 50-year marriage when Eleanor insisted on adding her own remarks, rising unsteadily with champagne glass in hand. "To 50 wonderful years," she began, her aristocratic Boston accent more pronounced with intoxication, "and to the continuation of the Wilson legacy through proper channels." An uncomfortable murmur rippled through the guests. Margaret looked alarmed, while Richard moved to gently guide his mother back to her seat. "Mother, thank you. That's enough now." But Eleanor wasn't finished. Her gaze fixed directly on Eliza as she continued, "We must be vigilant about preserving what makes this family special. Not everyone understands the importance of bloodlines and heritage." The room fell silent. I raised my camera automatically, capturing the tableau in perfect focus. Eleanor's challenging stare, Eliza's composed dignity, James's protective posture, and the shocked expressions of guests from both families. What happened next occurred so rapidly that I captured it in a burst of sequential frames. Dr. Chen, Eliza's grandfather, rose from his seat with the straight-backed dignity of his 80 years. He walked deliberately to the center of the room, stopping directly before Eleanor Wilson. "I understand perfectly the importance of heritage, Mrs. Wilson," he said, his accented English precise and clear. "My ancestors served as scholars in the imperial court while yours were still peasants in Europe. The question is not whether your grandson's children will have proper heritage. It is whether they will inherit your unfortunate prejudice along with your family's silver." The silence that followed was absolute. Eleanor's mouth opened and closed wordlessly, her social armor penetrated by this direct confrontation from a man she had clearly underestimated. Then, unexpectedly, Richard Wilson began to applaud, slowly at first, then with increasing conviction. Margaret joined him, then James and Eliza, until most of the room was applauding Dr. Chen's elegant rebuke. My camera captured it all: Eleanor's shock, Dr. Chen's dignity, and the family's collective response that clearly communicated a shift in power and perspective. The Wilson family was publicly aligning itself against the prejudice Eleanor represented, standing with the Chens in a visible declaration of values. As Dr. Chen returned to his seat, receiving respectful nods from guests of both families, I caught a frame that would become the centerpiece of this event's documentation: James embracing his grandfather-in-law with genuine respect, while his own grandmother looked on, her era of unchallenged authority visibly ending in real time. The anniversary celebration continued, but with a fundamentally altered energy. A boundary had been drawn, a standard established, and my camera had preserved the moment when a family chose its future values over its past prejudices. The images from the Wilson anniversary celebration became another chapter in the ongoing story of these merging families. I delivered them to James and Eliza with the same commitment to honesty that had guided my work at their wedding. The sequence capturing Dr. Chen's confrontation with Eleanor Wilson was powerful, a visual narrative of dignity overcoming prejudice, of outdated attitudes giving way to more inclusive values. 2 weeks after the event, Eliza invited me for coffee. She looked radiant, and I soon learned why. "We're expecting," she shared, her hands cradling her still flat stomach. "Due in summer. We've just started telling family." "Congratulations! How has everyone reacted?" Her smile held both joy and determination. "My family is thrilled, of course. James's parents," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "are genuinely excited but working through some internalized biases about mixed-race grandchildren. The important thing is, they're doing the work." "And Eleanor?" I couldn't help asking. Eliza's expression turned thoughtful. After what happened at the anniversary, Richard had a serious conversation with her. She's been notably quiet since then, but she did send a baby gift last week, a silver rattle that's apparently been in the Wilson family for generations. The symbolism wasn't subtle. That seems meaningful. It is. Not because we particularly care about Wilson heirlooms, but because it represents her acknowledgement that our child belongs in the family narrative. Eliza stirred her tea thoughtfully. Change happens slowly with people like Eleanor. But the public stance Richard and Margaret took that night created accountability that wasn't there before. As our conversation continued, Eliza shared that James had accepted a permanent position heading the Chicago office, allowing them to remain close to her family while maintaining Wilson business connections. They were house hunting in a diverse neighborhood with excellent schools, planning for a future where their child would be connected to both cultural heritages. "We're not naive about the challenges ahead," she acknowledged, "but we're building something intentional, a family culture that values both traditions while rejecting the prejudices of the past." Before we parted, she handed me a card containing a generous referral bonus and a note that brought tears to my eyes. "Maya, some photographers capture images. You captured truth. Your willingness to document difficult moments alongside beautiful ones helped create accountability that transformed our family dynamics. The baby we're expecting will grow up in a family that's doing the hard work of addressing bias and building bridges, partly because your camera wouldn't let anyone hide from reality. With deepest gratitude, Eliza and James." As a photographer, I've always believed in the power of images to tell stories. What I learned through my experience with the Chen Wilson family was that sometimes those stories continue evolving long after the shutter clicks. The moments we capture can become catalysts for reflection, growth, and genuine change. When I photographed Margaret Wilson whispering, "She doesn't belong here," I couldn't have anticipated how that single frame would spark a family transformation. But perhaps that's the true power of honest documentation. Not just preserving memories, but sometimes creating the necessary discomfort that leads to growth. 3 years later, I photographed the Chen Wilson family in their Chicago home. 2-year-old Lily, named for her aunt, sat on Dr. Chen's lap while Eleanor Wilson looked on with complex emotion. My camera captured the moment when the elderly woman reached out to straighten the child's collar, her hand lingering with something like wonder. In the background, Margaret and May chatted comfortably in the kitchen, while James and Eliza watched the scene with quiet satisfaction. Some journeys begin with, "I do." Others begin when someone whispers words they never expected to be heard. or captured. Thank you for experiencing as the photographer. I captured the moment the groom's mother whispered, "She doesn't belong here." If this story about cultural tensions, family dynamics, and the power of truth resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you witnessed or experienced similar situations where prejudice was confronted? Or have you seen how documentation, whether through images, recordings, or written accounts, created accountability that led to positive change? Share your story and join this important conversation.